For many years, Europe had a wonderful dream. This dream was called the Schengen area. It was a special zone where people could travel freely. You could drive from Paris to Berlin without stopping. You could take a train from Rome to Vienna without showing your passport. This idea of open borders was a powerful symbol. It showed that European countries were united. They trusted each other. They wanted to build a future together, without the barriers that once divided them. This freedom of movement was a cornerstone of the European Union, making life easier for millions of people who lived, worked, or traveled across the continent every single day. This open border system worked well for a long time. It helped economies grow. It allowed students to study in different countries. It let families living in separate nations visit each other easily. The Schengen area felt like one big country. You could cross a border and not even notice it. Maybe you would see a small sign, but there were no guards, no fences, and no long lines of cars waiting for inspection. This was the reality for over 400 million people living in 27 participating countries. It was a daily reminder of peace and cooperation, a stark contrast to the continent's history of wars and divisions. But in recent years, this dream has faced serious challenges. Some countries have started to bring back border controls. The freedom to travel without checks is no longer guaranteed everywhere. This has caused a lot of debate and concern. Why is this happening? What has changed? The reasons are complex. They involve issues like security, migration, and politics. This essay will explore why the idea of a borderless Europe is being tested. We will look at the real reasons behind these decisions and what they mean for the future of the European Union and the people who call it home. To understand why borders are closing, we must first understand a key term: irregular migration. This term may sound complicated, but the idea is simple. It refers to people entering a country without the official permission to do so. This means they might cross a border without a visa or a valid passport. They might arrive in a country legally, for example, as a tourist, but then stay longer than their permit allows. These individuals are often looking for safety or a better life. They might be escaping war, poverty, or persecution in their home countries. They are not considered criminals in the traditional sense, but their entry does not follow the established legal procedures. The journey for these individuals is often very dangerous and difficult. They may travel for thousands of miles, crossing deserts, seas, and mountains. Many rely on smugglers who charge large amounts of money for a risky passage. These journeys can end in tragedy. We have all seen the heartbreaking images of overcrowded boats capsizing in the Mediterranean Sea. The people undertaking these voyages are vulnerable. When they arrive in a European country, they often have very little and are in desperate need of help, including food, shelter, and medical care. Their situation presents a profound humanitarian challenge for the countries they reach. Why is this a challenge for European countries? The main reason is the sheer number of people arriving at once. When thousands of people arrive in a short period, it puts a huge strain on a country's resources. One of the biggest reasons governments give for reintroducing border controls is public security. They worry that among the large numbers of people arriving, there could be individuals with dangerous intentions. This concern became especially strong after a series of terrorist attacks in Europe over the last decade. For example, attacks in Paris, Brussels, and Berlin raised fears that extremists could use the free movement within the Schengen area to plan and carry out violence. Governments argue that by checking people at the borders, they can better identify potential threats. They can screen individuals against security databases and prevent those with known links to criminal or terrorist groups from entering their territory. Another major factor is the pressure on a country's asylum system. As we discussed, when a country receives a very large number of asylum seekers in a short time, its systems can be pushed to the breaking point. Reception centers become overcrowded. The processing of asylum claims slows down to a crawl. This can lead to a humanitarian crisis within the country itself. To manage this situation, a government might decide to temporarily close its borders. The goal is to slow down the flow of new arrivals. This gives them time to process the existing applications, expand their reception capacity, and bring the situation back under control. Concerns about crime also play a significant role in these decisions. Some politicians and members of the public link irregular migration to an increase in criminal activity. In recent years, some European countries have reported a rise in crimes such as theft, assaults, and sexual offenses involving groups identified as illegal migrant gangs. These incidents have sparked public debate and concern, especially when media reports highlight cases involving individuals from predominantly Muslim countries. While the vast majority of migrants do not commit crimes, and many are fleeing hardship, some high-profile cases have led to increased scrutiny and calls for stricter border controls. Authorities emphasize the importance of distinguishing between individuals and groups, and stress that crime statistics must be interpreted carefully to avoid unfair generalizations or stigmatization. While the connection is often complex and debated, the perception itself can be powerful. Governments may feel public pressure to act tough on crime. Reintroducing border checks is seen as a direct way to show they are taking action. Finally, internal politics is a powerful driver. In many European countries, immigration has become a central and highly divisive political issue. Political parties that advocate for stricter border controls have gained popularity. Across Europe, local residents have watched their neighborhoods change. In Germany, for example, the arrival of large numbers of illegal migrants in 2015 brought a wave of fear and uncertainty. Families who once felt safe now worry about their children walking home at night. Residents remember the headlines, break-ins, assaults, and thefts that shook their sense of security. The open-door policy, once celebrated, left many feeling exposed and unheard. In the years that followed, German communities saw a rise in crimes committed by illegal migrants. Local news reported on robberies, violent attacks, and harassment in once peaceful towns. Parents formed neighborhood watch groups, and shop owners installed extra security. The fear was real. People changed their routines, avoided going out after dark, and demanded action from their leaders. Residents recall specific incidents: assaults in city parks, burglaries in quiet suburbs, and groups of young men intimidating passersby. News headlines highlighted the growing sense of danger. Many felt abandoned by authorities who seemed more concerned with political correctness than with protecting their citizens. The frustration grew as families locked their doors and worried about their loved ones. The Berlin Christmas market attack in 2016 was a turning point. People demanded stronger border controls and more police on the streets. Community meetings were filled with angry voices, calling for leaders to put safety first. The fear and anger were impossible to ignore. Residents wanted real solutions, not empty promises. In response, Germany reintroduced border checks, finally listening to the voices of its people. Many residents felt relief seeing police at the borders and patrols in their neighborhoods. But the scars of fear remain, and communities continue to push for even tougher measures to keep their families safe. France faced similar fears. After the Paris attacks, residents demanded immediate action. Police flooded the streets, and border controls were put back in place. Local families, still haunted by the violence, supported these measures and called for even stricter enforcement to protect their neighborhoods. In towns across France, people locked their doors and avoided empty streets at night. Shopkeepers closed early, and parents kept their children close. The fear of crime committed by illegal migrants changed daily life. Residents spoke out in interviews, sharing their anxiety and demanding that leaders put their safety first. Systematic border checks became the new normal. Police and security services worked around the clock, searching for threats and responding to residents' concerns. Community meetings grew larger, with more people demanding action and sharing stories of crime and fear. Austria, too, responded to the demands of its people. With migrants passing through in large numbers, residents worried about crime and the safety of their families. The government increased border controls and police patrols, answering the calls of communities desperate for protection. In Denmark and Sweden, local residents voiced similar fears. Reports of crimes committed by illegal migrants led to public outcry. People demanded border checks and more police on the streets. The message was clear. Communities wanted safety and order restored. Residents in these countries organized community patrols and neighborhood meetings. News stories highlighted their fears and frustrations. The sense of unity was strong. People stood together, determined to protect their homes from the threat of crime. The call for stronger border controls continues to grow. Residents across Europe want leaders to listen to their fears and take decisive action. For many, the return of border checks is not just a policy, it's a lifeline, a way to reclaim the safety and peace they once knew. The debate is over for many local families. They want action, not words. European countries must put the safety of their citizens first, with strong borders and visible security. Only then can residents begin to feel safe in their own neighborhoods again. What do you think about the return of border checks in Europe? Do you feel safer? Or do you worry about the impact on freedom and daily life? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The Schengen area does not mean that countries have given up their right to control their borders forever. There is a rulebook, known as the Schengen Borders Code, that explains exactly when and how a country can bring back temporary checks. This code is the legal foundation for the entire system. It recognizes that there may be exceptional situations where a country needs to reinstate controls to protect itself. The rules are designed to ensure that such measures are only used when absolutely necessary. They are meant to be a temporary solution, not a permanent return to the old days of closed national borders. The code sets out clear procedures that member states must follow. The code outlines two main scenarios for reintroducing border controls. The first is for foreseeable events. This could be a major international summit, a large sporting event like the Olympics, or a planned political protest where there is a known security risk. The second scenario is for urgent cases that require immediate action. This applies when there is a serious threat to public policy or internal security that was not foreseen. A terrorist attack is a clear example. In these cases, a country must inform the European Commission and other Schengen countries in advance. The initial period for these controls is typically up to 30 days, but it can be extended if the threat continues, up to a maximum of 6 months. In such an emergency, a country can immediately reintroduce border controls without prior warning. These emergency controls can be in place for an initial period of 10 days and can be extended for periods of 20 days, up to a total of 2 months. There is also a special procedure for exceptional circumstances where the overall functioning of the Schengen area is at risk. Under this rule, controls can be recommended by the EU itself and can last for up to 2 years. At the very core of the Schengen Borders Code is this principle: reintroducing internal border controls must always be a measure of last resort. What that really means is, a country should only take this step after every other option has been tried and has failed. For instance, before deciding to close a border, a country ought to try increasing police cooperation with its neighbors. They could also focus on more targeted police checks in the border region, instead of right at the border crossing itself. The whole idea here is to find solutions that are way less disruptive to the freedom of movement. Shutting a border comes with some pretty big costs, not just for the economy, but for commuters and for the very spirit of European unity. The rules are also very clear. Any reintroduction of border controls must be strictly limited in time. The system is set up to prevent these temporary measures from becoming permanent. Like we've seen, the Schengen Borders Code actually spells out specific maximum durations: 6 months for foreseeable events, or up to 2 years for truly exceptional circumstances. On top of that, the scope and intensity of the checks have to be proportional to the threat. So, a country can't just shut down its entire border for a minor reason. The checks should be targeted. The European Commission plays a pretty important role in the Schengen system, but its powers are actually kind of limited. The Commission acts as the guardian of the treaties, which basically means it's supposed to make sure that member countries are sticking to the rules they all agreed to. When a country decides to bring back border controls, it has to notify the Commission. The Commission then takes a look at the reasons given, checking whether the decision meets the conditions set out in the Schengen Borders Code. In a way, the Commission is like a referee just watching the game to make sure everyone's playing fair. But here's the thing. The European Commission doesn't actually have the power to veto a country's decision to reintroduce border controls. National security is still the sole responsibility of each individual member state. What it can do is issue an opinion, stating whether it thinks the measures are justified or not. If the Commission thinks a country isn't following the rules, it can take legal action. This is called an infringement procedure. This balance of power is key to understanding why long-term border controls have been possible, even with rules that are supposed to keep them temporary. The EU is built on shared rules and institutions, but it's still an alliance of sovereign nations. The European Commission can monitor, advise, and challenge countries legally, but it can't force a member state to open its borders if that state insists its security is at risk. The return of border controls isn't just a political or legal issue. It really impacts people's day-to-day lives. Just think about the millions of folks who live in one country and work in another. These are the cross-border commuters. For years, they enjoyed a smooth, easy journey to work. Now, with border checks back in place, they face long traffic jams and unpredictable delays every single day. What used to be a 30-minute commute can easily turn into a 2-hour ordeal. That adds a lot of stress, costs more in fuel, and eats up precious time that could be spent with family. For these people, the dream of an integrated Europe has been replaced by the frustration of a daily border queue. The economic cost is pretty significant, too. The Schengen area was designed to boost trade and tourism. Open borders let goods move quickly and cheaply across the continent. But when trucks have to wait for hours at border checkpoints, it messes up supply chains and makes doing business more expensive. For companies that depend on just-in-time delivery, these delays can be a real disaster. The tourism industry takes a hit as well. Tourists who are used to hopping between European countries with ease might be put off by the hassle of border checks. For asylum seekers and migrants, the closure of internal borders creates even more hardship and danger. When official border crossings are controlled, people are often forced to look for more perilous routes to enter a country. And beyond the practical and economic costs, there's a symbolic price too. The open borders of Schengen were a powerful symbol of trust, unity, and reconciliation in Europe. The return of fences, guards, and checkpoints sends a very different message. For a whole generation of young Europeans who grew up taking free movement for granted, it can be pretty disillusioning. The Schengen area is really at a crossroads right now. The challenges of irregular migration and security threats aren't going away anytime soon. That means European countries will keep facing the tough task of balancing two fundamental values: the freedom of movement for their citizens and the need to keep everyone safe and maintain public order. Finding that right balance is honestly one of the biggest political challenges for the European Union today. The debate isn't so much about whether to have open borders anymore. It's about how to manage them in a world that feels a lot more complicated and dangerous than it did when Schengen first began. One possible path forward is to strengthen the EU's external borders. A lot of leaders argue that, to have no internal borders, the Union needs really strong and secure external borders. That's why there's been more funding for Frontex, the European Border and Coast Guard Agency. The idea is to better control who enters the Schengen area in the first place. Another key part of the solution is more cooperation and trust between member states. A more sustainable approach would require more solidarity, like a fairer system for sharing the responsibility of hosting asylum seekers. At the end of the day, the future of the Schengen dream really depends on political will. It takes leaders and citizens recommitting to the idea that the benefits of free movement outweigh the risks. It means accepting that perfect security just isn't possible, and that living in an open society always involves some degree of managed risk. The real challenge is to handle those risks intelligently and collectively, through cooperation and respect for the rule of law. The next few years will show whether Europe can find a way to keep one of its greatest achievements, or if the fences and walls of the past will slowly start to come back. Like and subscribe to Smarter Brains for more engaging deep dives into breaking news, politics, sociology, economics, and social policy.